Okay, here we go. This is video number 4, intimacy phase as risk mitigation. Ooh, what does this mean? Okay, let's dive in. I'd like to introduce you to Steve and Tiffany. Steve and Tiffany have been dating for 5 months, and for 3 of those months, they've been in a committed, exclusive relationship with each other. Their dating process has been, according to Steve and Tiffany, absolutely fantastic. They were introduced by a mutual friend and spent time getting to know each other, playing cards as a couple. Those nights turned into late-night movies as a group. They grew closer and closer. The text messages, late-night phone calls turned longer and more drawn out. Steve found out her favorite childhood memory, which was going to the zoo and looking at polar bears. Steve replicated it and made it a crazy fun first date. Steve took a risk and expressed his attraction, and she reciprocated. Steve was intentional about his dates with her and going out and having fun. They continued to do things with each other, as well as with the other couple that introduced them. The uncertainty period wasn't seismic by any means, but they both wrestled through a few differences of opinion. Most of their values aligned with a few small disagreements, and most of the rub had to do with the preferential differences, like where they preferred to vacation, what movies they like, right? The exclusive phase was even better. Steve learned from a previous relationship not to let this one coast. He pursued her with precision in what she enjoyed, romanced her on a regular basis, and swept her off of her feet. And now, 5 months into the relationship, Steve and Tiffany find themselves to be in a safe place for intimacy. They have found each other safe to express their needs and have the other one meet that need consistently, fully completing the trust cycle over and over. The first month of doing this, they were a little clunky, as they had to use the iMessages from script because Steve had a tendency in other relationships to make judgments with statements like, I feel like you need to get over yourself. I feel like you need to suck it up and go with the flow. I feel smothered, right? Steve was on it though, and knew he needed to change his language and really learn the iMessages well. And it worked. Steve worked hard. They felt like they were hearing each other, and she didn't feel condemned with these judgments, right? Steve was able to move from this cycle of mistrust, express his need, the need was expressed, there's no response to that need, the need was left unsatisfied and covered. He was able to move from the mistrust cycle to the trust cycle. Remember, express the need expressed, there's a response to that need, the need was satisfied, and then there's comfort. The result was incredible. Steve was very intelligent. Once he was able to recognize what he was doing wrong, he was very rapidly able to put into these action these iMessages in a way that Tiffany loved, right? Because they did it in a playful way too. They both had entered into intimacy, being fully known and accepted by the other individual, and now they both understood why some have described intimacy as euphoric. And now we've entered into one of the greatest problems why relationships don't make it into intimacy. And it's terrifying, and it has to do with vulnerability. At this point, I'd like you to make a case before diving in a little bit further. My question to you is this: is this risk worth the reward, right? There is this term risk mitigation, which simply means an overall approach to reduce the risk, impact, severity, and or probability of occurrence. It's a business term that addresses where businesses are exposed and what an individual or corporation can do to reduce that exposure. The problem with being vulnerable is that it exposes our needs, right? And sometimes our greatest need while risking our greatest pain, right? On the other hand, it can bring euphoria, right? And on the other hand, it can bring great heartbreak, rejection, and then the shame and guilt that comes with that, which we fight against that shame, right? That's nasty stuff. By the time that we're adults, more than likely we've experienced enough heartbreak and enough pain that you may not want to take a risk at all, right? Let's go back to risk mitigation. And this is the reason why I highly advocate the 5-phase process of a relationship. Most of the hurt and pain that I've experienced or witnessed both in men and women is that they fail to establish the conditions for entering into intimacy. You see, most of us crave it and we long for it, and when we can't get it, we'll go to painstaking levels to make sure that we do. Steve and Tiffany underwent risk mitigation with their process, and the process protected them both, right? And let's go back to the process. Attraction. Steve expressed his attraction and she reciprocated. There was uncertainty. They both wrestled through a few value differences on their own. Wasn't seismic, but it was, it was certain. It was okay, right? Exclusivity, right? Powerful exclusivity. They continually invested in each other, had fun, and made life experiences together, right? They understood that life is a compilation of moments. And now 5 months into the relationship, they are taking a greater and greater risks. And you see Steve and Tiffany's risk mitigation is the process. Angie and I had been dating about 4 months with an incredibly healthy dating process, and I knew that it was time. Every Friday was our date day. I think I've said this before. I had half the day off on Friday, and she had the full day off. I usually picked her up about 2 p.m., and we spent the rest of the day together. So I took her out on a date, and I had a blanket out with flowers, brought our standard wine, cheese, and chocolate, and sat next to a river out near Lassen National Forest. And on that blanket, I told her something that was an incredible risk for me. And the reason it was a risk for me, because the last time I told this to a woman, a few weeks later, I was crushed by her, right? I told Angie that day that I loved her. And she said that she loved me too. And honestly, I wish that I would have known this process 7 years earlier before I revealed my need, my insides to a woman who never valued the process and never valued the commitment prior to the intimacy. Right? She was dating me without dating for like 6 months, meaning that she loved to go to deeper levels of intimacy but never fully wrestled through her uncertainty in order to establish a commitment. And I took a huge risk by opening up without that commitment, and man, did that one hurt, right? In hindsight, I know I have to fully own my decision, but I wish I would have known then what I'm teaching you now. Trust the process. Mitigate your risk with the process. Establish the conditions for intimacy, and know it can be euphoric, right? So that's the last slide of this video. I will see you in the next video. You guys are rock stars. We'll see you soon.